Hello, hi-fi friends. Can you believe that last week a friend of mine called me the A word? Now, it's not the A word that's probably first coming to mind for you. I'm actually used to being called that A word. This one was even worse, audiophile. Now, my initial reaction was to say, I'm not an audiophile. When my friend disagreed, I simply replied, I feel like I suck at being an audiophile, and came up with another phrase that I think better identifies me in relation to this hobby. Let me tell you the 4 reasons I gave him as to why I feel like I suck at being an audiophile, and also give you the phrase that I came up with in case you're looking for something to better identify yourself as well within this hobby. The first reason I push back on my friend's description of me as an audiophile is kind of a silly one, but to be honest, it's just that I really don't feel like an audiophile because I don't really own any expensive audio gear. Now, you might disagree and say that spending $1,300 on the shit transport and another $800 on the Denafritz Aries 2 DAC is expensive. At least that's what my wife said. But in comparison to what is available for audiophiles to buy, all of my gear is really more on the budget side of things. Now, I'll be honest with you and admit that I would love to review more expensive gear on this channel. I just don't know how to get my hands on a $5,000 amp to review. And once I do, who knows, maybe I'll feel like upgrading to that level of gear. But right now, my current level of spending just doesn't make me feel like an audiophile, especially after I finish reading each issue of Stereophile magazine. But stick with me to the end of this video because maybe I shouldn't be associating the word audiophile with expensive gear after all. I'll explain more about that in a few minutes. A lot of folks in this hobby stand by one format only, be it vinyl, CD, streaming, even cassettes, and claim that it is the dominant format and everything else should be ignored. However, I have found there are flaws in every format. Vinyl has pops and can warp and skip. CDs have some digital sheen that can be fatiguing. Some streaming services sound too compressed, and there's not even enough time for me to explain the issues that arise using cassettes, even though I still love playing them and recording on them. So in my eyes, every format is flawed. So why tell people one is better than all the rest? I just don't feel like one format should be dominant in my sound system like some audiophiles do. Now, to be clear, I don't think having a format preference is actually a bad thing. I just think it's bad when we start to tell people, like some audiophile behavior I've seen, that their format preference is the best and the only one that should be used. I think one of the best traits in a human is curiosity. Just the desire to ask questions and try to figure things out for themselves. This entire YouTube channel exists as a way for me to learn new things about audio gear and hopefully relate those back to you in an informative way, or at least in an entertaining way. A lot of audiophiles make confident statements that are to be seen as the definitive gospel, with phrases like tubes sound the best and all Class D amplifiers suck. But they don't even actually go out and try new products that might challenge their opinion and even possibly change their mind. Basically, they'd rather be confident in their opinion than to be curious and possibly change their mind. I'm an extremely curious person, and I always want to try to experience things firsthand. So when the popularity of Class D amplifiers started to rise with companies like Fozzy and IEMA, and I would go on audiophile message boards and read that all Class D amplifiers suck, I really started to wonder, could that possibly be the case? So I went out and I started buying them to sit with and listen to and actually determine if that was truly the case, if every single one sucked as bad as some of these message boards claimed. Here's another example. When I wanted to know if a CD transport would sound better in a CD player, I went out and I bought the shit transport and tried to determine for myself. Here's another great example. When I first started getting back into audio about 10 years ago, it was through vintage audio and vintage receivers, especially. And everyone kept telling me, you gotta have a lot of power. You go on these vintage audio boards and you need a Marantz 2285 or a Pioneer SX 1280. You need power, power, power. And that's what I chased for a few years, only to realize recently that I actually prefer the sound of lower wattage amplifiers. In the vintage world, something like a Harman Kardon 430. I even use the shit Yellowhorn 10-watt amp here in my small listening space and have absolutely loved the detail and precision that that amplifier gives me versus the higher powered amplifiers that I thought I was supposed to buy. I learned all this through curiosity, going out, trying to find products, bringing them home, and find the right pairing that suited for me, rather than just reading someone's confident statement of what I had to have that may not actually be true for me. Everyone has their own music taste, but some audiophiles only listen to certain artists or recordings because they sound the best. When I first started subscribing to Stereophile magazine, I would actually make notes of the artists and albums that they were listening to because I started to think that this was the music that I was supposed to listen to now with my new gear. And to be honest with you, I had the hardest time actually finding interest in those artists or those recordings, and I would just go back to my music collection and pull out what I have always listened to, no matter how good or bad the recording sounded. Look, I don't think any of these artists are bad because at the end of the day, everything in this hobby is about personal preference. I'm just saying I'm not going to listen to a Diana Krall recording just because it's an audiophile recording. And I have nothing against Diana. She's an amazing, incredible, talented artist. I just wonder sometimes when we're told that we should be listening to these audiophile recordings, that's when it becomes more about listening to the gear rather than the music. And at the end of the day, I have to listen to the music first before I listen to the gear. My formative music listening years was between the 1990s and 2000s, when albums were mastered so loud on CD that when you played them, if you had a mouse living in your attic, it would move to the neighbor's house next door. That's how loud and annoying it could be. But these are the albums that I know inside and out. And no matter how imperfect they are, I still gravitate towards those even when testing gear because I know them so well that I'm listening for two things. One, can the new gear actually help improve the playback of the poor recording? Or two, can I hear new and interesting things with the new gear that I haven't heard when listening to these albums thousands of times before on other gear? In short, I'm not going to upgrade my musical taste to a more audiophile style just because I might be upgrading my stereo gear in an audiophile manner. Now, after giving all these reasons of why I feel like I suck at being an audiophile to my friend, he actually pulled out his phone and Googled the definition for audiophile. And we found that Merriam-Webster defines it simply as a person who is enthusiastic about high fidelity sound reproduction. Crap, that probably means I'm an audiophile. After reading this simple description, it occurred to me that I really had an idea of what an audiophile is based on the way some people behave in this hobby. But just reading the simple description made me feel better about classifying myself as an audiophile and not really thinking I suck as much as I do. Because in the description, nowhere does it mention anything about spending a lot of money, what format of music you listen to, or what style of music you listen to. It simply just states that you need to be enthusiastic about high fidelity sound reproduction. The word that stands out to me the most in this definition is simply enthusiastic. If someone were to ask me if I were an audiophile, at this point, I actually don't feel as bad or that I suck as much as I said earlier. in my own definition of myself as an audiophile based on that simple definition that we got from the dictionary there. But I actually feel like I might tell people that I'm more of an audio enthusiast because I just find all of this stuff to be so exciting and intriguing. And all I want in this channel is my enthusiasm to come out and for people to see, like, hey, this guy is really having fun going through all of these products or trying to show someone which turntable they should buy or how to hook it up to their receiver or which Class D amplifier should I buy, which one did he love, which one did he not like at all. And in this whole new headphone era that I'm sort of wading into this year, what's he learning that might be valuable to me if I were to wade into that situation as well? It's just, I want the enthusiasm to come out more than a sense of confidence as an audiophile that this is the way. Because I don't know that I want to claim that as much as I just want to be enthusiastic in just opening the box and just being like, ooh, this looks fun, and just going through it all and figuring out, is it something you should buy or is it something you shouldn't buy? That's really the goal of this channel. And so audio enthusiasts may seem more real to me than an audiophile. But I can guarantee you this. If we were to run into each other in real life, you could feel free to call me audiophile or audio enthusiast. You could also just call me Aaron, my first name. And if there's anything that I'd love to do more, it would be simply to go grab a coffee or a beer and hear all about your journey in this hobby. So what about you? Do you mind being called an audiophile, or do you have another term you prefer instead? Please let me know in the comments below. Now, as I mentioned earlier in this video, I did spend some money last year to improve the sound of CDs in my system. That really came through the use of my Shit-Erd and Denafrips Aries 2 DAC. Now, I made a video on how I bought both of those and paired them together and the results I got. If you're interested in learning more about my experience with those products, you can do so by watching this video here.